Hi, I'm Megan. I'm a veterinarian assistant.
I'm Dr. Alicia Lima Eid. I'm a veterinarian.
I'm Heather. I'm a technician, and you're listening to
The Bark at Beaties. Today on the Bark at Beaties, it's our fourth podcast episode, and we are going to be talking about something that's actually come up quite a bit in discussion lately surrounding vet medicine, and that is ordering your pet's medication from online pet pharmacies. And it's something that we get. Everybody understands the economy right now. Things are tough. Everything is really expensive. We don't know when that's going to change, whether it's groceries, gas, pet food, like everything. And so, understandably so, people are trying to find ways to mitigate that cost. And, like with a lot of things, if there is a cheaper option, definitely people are going to explore it, and we understand that. But our goal today is to talk about some of the risks and red flags associated with ordering your pet's medications from these online pet pharmacies. And we understand the reasoning behind it, but we just want to make sure people have informed decision making and know what they're signing on for, because it's not always super clear and it's not always super obvious what some of those pitfalls and concerns might be.
So hey, why not ask the experts?
Yep. So we're here. We're here to talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. And then, Meg, what has been your experience with clients coming in talking about medications that their pets are on?
Yeah. So a lot of the times, pet owners, they really just want to do right by their pet. And sometimes that comes with them trying an over-the-counter product first before they're ready to make that venture into the veterinarian office. So my job when taking in appointments, I'm taking history. I need to know if there's any medications been given or if we've tried any products over the counter and what our success rate was with that. Typically speaking, the majority of the owners that, again, just want to do right by their pets and try something, they have very little to no effectiveness as far as clearing up the issue, whether it be an inner ear infection, whether it be a topical solution we're putting on the skin to kind of ward off a hot spot. There's, sometimes there's hot spot sprays we can get, things like that. But what I'm finding is when I'm taking the notes and whatnot, a lot of what we say when using those over-the-counter products is, well, it helped for the first couple of days and then the symptoms got worse. Yep. So sometimes over-the-counter products can act as a temporary Band-Aid in which they're somewhat helping the ailments that we're trying to alleviate. But ultimately what ends up happening is that they come back, they come in for the consult and the physical assessment, head to tail assessments done, and they're going home with a veterinarian grade product to alleviate whatever symptoms they had come in for, and the over-the-counter product didn't work effectively.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point, like you said, Megan, about when you're coming in for your visit, let's say it's for ears or your pet's, having diarrhea, or you're worried about worms. When you're coming in to see your veterinarian is going to do that full assessment, right? From nose to tail. And so sometimes a lot of these issues that come up are actually interrelated, but when you're just using something over the counter, it's targeting one specific thing. Whereas talking to your veterinary team, finding out what's the commonality here, or what can we do to treat this all in one go when it's possible. And there isn't anything, wrong with trying an over-the-counter product, for sure. I'm not, going to knock that. We've all at some point tried something like that. But, when it comes to, if that's not working the first time around and you keep going back to these over-the-counter products and trying different things, sometimes you actually end up spending more money with all of these over-the-counter items than you would just getting the prescription grade medication, because some of those things are not cheap. And yeah, Megan, people just want to do right by their pets, for sure.
That's it.
And when we're talking about the online pharmacies, these are the ones that you type into Google pet meds, and there's a variety of different ones that come up. It's not just one that we're talking about, but they are very very good at having images of, let's say it's parasite prevention, right? So your flea, tick, heartworm medication, having a very legitimate looking image on there. And it almost looks identical to what you would pick up at the vet clinic. And the reason for that is because they a lot of these places are actually sourcing the medication from other countries. So for example, Australia, where a lot of these flea tick heartworm products are available over the counter, which is fine. That's great. But what happens is for these pharmacies to get the medication from Australia to us here in Ontario, that product has to go from the Australian pharmacy. It goes onto the Australian tarmac, which is boiling hot in some of that Australian weather.
Crikey.
Crikey. And then it goes from that really, really hot environment to up in the air on the plane, which is now freezing, very, very cold temperatures, back down to whatever season it is here in Ontario. And so what happens is that major fluctuation in temperature of that product can alter the actual molecule's efficacy or storage or handling. And so what's being sold in Australia and what's coming here may be altered. And we have no way of guaranteeing that it's being temperature controlled properly, that it's being handled appropriately. Is it sitting on that tarmac for 3 days? There's no regulation or guarantee. And there's certain medications where that temperature fluctuation or even the handling of that product is really, really specific. So, for example, insulin has to be refrigerated. It has to be contained and maintained at a certain temperature, or else the actual insulin itself starts to crystallize and denature. And so what can happen then is now you've got this product, which there's no guarantee it's been stored properly. Now you administer that insulin to your pet, and we don't know what the molecular composition or efficacy is. And that can be really dangerous to your pet. But it makes it look very appealing, obviously, online, because the price point is different, and we all get that. We all shop around, we do that, but these are the things that aren't always as obvious, and why this discussion is so important.
Yeah, especially when we say the insulins that they will crystallize. It doesn't mean you're going to actually see crystals in there. Anybody who's got their pet on an insulin, you know that you got to roll the bottle to mix it up because it gets a little cloudy on the bottom. But it doesn't actually change it visually if you accidentally leave it out of the fridge for more than a day. And now we're talking about them being shipped from Australia, which I don't know, that sounds like a super jet, which can't be cheap. But most of those pharmacies are advertising 1 to 5 days for shipping. It's the 5 days that scares me. 3 days even scares me. Because, yes, you have these pharmacies that are selling things online, especially the online pharmacies, which, great news, according to the government of Canada, which you guys can look this up. It's ridiculous. Their stat is, let me just find this back because I scrolled a little too far. According to the government of Canada, 96% of online pharmacies globally and 74% of the ones in North America are not trustworthy.
Yeah, that's a pretty high number, right? But they make it look legitimate. It's really deceiving.
It looks so good.
And this is information, like Heather said, you can find on the Government of Canada website. This is not from us. We're reading it right from the website. So.
That's beautiful information to have, because that's scary. 3/4 of online pharmacies in North America. So even if they have an address here, that doesn't necessarily mean it's one of the signatures that they'll have you look for, but it's not the only criteria.
Yeah.
Another thing that has come up recently, as I was reading an article, because Dr. Justina mentioned it, was a dog went in for a visit showing some gnarly signs, which I'm going to describe them to you, and you tell me what you think they might have been on medication.
I love this game. I love this game.
Right on the spot.
Okay. Increased appetite, increased thirst, and still some weight loss. Owner said that they've been on some cyclosporin for the dog. And so cyclosporin itself is an immunosuppressant drug. And the vet's like, okay, well, that wasn't from me. And then it turns out they had gotten it from an online pharmacy that did not require a prescription, which is another red flag.
Huge red flag.
Huge red flag for online pharmacies. If you're getting prescription-only drugs without a prescription,
there's a problem there. That's a red flag.
Big problem.
Waving the flags. I should have some red flags.
Yeah.
I wish we had red flags.
For this. The red flag, green flag guy.
Yeah.
Get him involved. Because to get a prescription, so they're looking at it, and then, of course, those kind of side effects that were coming in to be described, increased appetite, increased thirst, weight loss despite strong appetite, can all be ascribed as a steroid side effect. Anytime we have a pet on Phenoxyl P or something, we're like, hey, your dog's going to want to eat more. Totally normal.
Which is weird for cyclosporin, because it's not a steroid.
No, and that's where it gets more interesting, because once we're like, okay, this is weird, and hey, that online pharmacy is very sus, The owner actually submitted one of those cyclosporin tablets for testing, and the lab came back that it didn't have any of that in there. It had
scary.
dexamethasone,
Right, which is a steroid.
So
very different from what was being advertised, and that this owner went and said, I'm going to use this medication, and actually had detrimental effects to the eye.
The owner genuinely thought that they were helping their pet. They were trying to be cost effective, be able to afford things still, but also make sure their pet is getting the best care. And unfortunately, it turned into a nightmare for them, which I cannot imagine, like, the guilt. So I feel for that owner. Like, that is absolutely awful to have to experience.
And I'm sure it's not the only situation. Like, I mean, we were talking about this. So we actually went on and looked at a particular one of these pet pharmacy websites, and the product that they were showing, and it was named and it looked very legitimate and comparable to what you would purchase in clinic. The description was off. It was claiming or making claims for, coverage of certain things that is not on label in Canada for that product. So right there, red flag.
Well, and I think too that your consumer isn't always going to read the fine print
100%.
either. So if they put enough money into marketing and packaging, they're going to look at it and be like, wow, identical to last year's dose.
Yeah. For half the price, right?
Same product.
Yeah.
Same product without reading the slip, reading the fine print in the label, and knowing that maybe the active ingredients are slightly off.
Right. And that's where your veterinary team would know that. We would know the differences. We would know that claim actually is not appropriate for that product. And they're clearly just copying and pasting it off of somewhere else. So again, it goes into, as veterinarians, as veterinary team members, we have extensive training because these are the products that we are utilizing and educating our clients on. Every single year we have continuing education on the different heartworm, flea, tick products every single year. So that gives us an opportunity to ask questions, to review safety studies, to talk about what's different, what's new, what is protected this year, what's not. And we have that information every year. It's current, it's fresh, whereas it's not always the case with, even a human pharmacist who maybe, yes, is aware of what that medication would do for pets, but isn't up to date because they're not doing it every year, because understandably that is not their profession. That's not their job. So
their bread and butter is humans.
It's humans, which is totally fine. There's a lot of medication that is comparable between, what we can use in vet med versus what we can use in human medication, but not all are. And that's why, we recommend have that conversation with your veterinary team. And we have a variety of ways to make it affordable.
Absolutely.
Right?
Nobody's, you had spoken before about how things are tight financially. And when it comes to getting prevention at your veterinarian clinic, we're not looking for you to just sign on for a 6-month supply, every single for that visit itself. If it's more economical that we do a month-to-month basis where, your cost has now gone down to $36, $38 a month, to make sure that we have that, reassurance on board that we have that protection against heartworm, intestinal parasites, ticks, and fleas. We want to work with the client. Yeah. We don't want to shame people for not taking the 6-pack, or
no shame.
Right. We would rather feel that you're doing your absolute best by getting that dose on board, and we'll see you next month for your weigh-in in the case that you're a puppy or a growing puppy. And absolutely no shade or shame, because you're trying to do, you're using a great product, a veterinarian grade product, and if this is what you can do, let's work with that.
Yeah. Plus it works as a bonus social visit for your pets as well, coming in for those weigh-ins, because they might be a little bit timid coming into the vet, and fair enough if they're only coming once a year because they're doing really well at home and staying really healthy. But then that way they get to come in and they get to hop on the scale, get a treat at the front counter for the ladies.
It's a great time.
Right? And then the mom pays the money and then they go on their day again.
Right. We see it even with the over-the-counter flea. Since the patent for Advantage, was opened up and other companies could manufacture it. Seeing the efficacy of that, or a product like that with fleas, sometimes they're coming in having bought it over the counter, and they need something a little bit our strength, more or less. I see that quite often as far as that's concerned with different products.
Yep. And the other thing too is your veterinary clinic, your veterinary team is able, not only like Megan said, to break it down, make it more affordable, maybe month to month instead of the full box, which a lot of online companies can't do. Some find ways around it, but we make it affordable. The other thing too is if there's ever a problem with that particular product, and you buy it from us, from your veterinarian, and you say, hey, my pet, vomited this up, or I'm worried about, he didn't tolerate this well, we will be able to support that. Our companies will be able to back that, whether it's, replacing a product, part of the cost associated with whatever may happen, because we have that relationship and they can guarantee their product and back their product. For the online pharmacies, they can't. So if your pet has some sort of terrible reaction or doesn't tolerate that medication, or whatever it might be, or you're looking for a replacement, they don't have that same guarantee. And unfortunately, when you bring that to your veterinary clinic, I mean, we're always going to support the patient because that's the number one important thing. But in terms of the actual product itself, we have no guarantee about what that product was that was purchased online, because it didn't come from a reputable source in terms of being able to trace that back to certain numbers, where it was produced, when it was produced, and finding out, is it a batch problem, right? Like that happens sometimes, or even just replacing that product. So that's it's really important that where your medication's coming from, that it's an accurate, and that you have that company support and that trusted relationship that we are very selective in creating with different companies to ensure that all of our products are safe and appropriate for our patients.
Yeah, because if we don't trust it for our own pets, we're not going to dispense
100%. 100%.
Forget that.
I will only make recommendations for things that I would use on my own pet.
Yeah.
Because we get it. These are your fur babies. They're your family, and our goal is to not only be there when you need us, but to educate you and just kind of watch out for certain pitfalls and things. And I think it's safe to say that the tried and true slogan of it seems too good to be true. It probably is. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We don't fault people for looking, again, in today's economy, but if you have questions or you're unsure, have that conversation with your veterinary team, because they're going to explain to you a lot of the similar things that we talked about here. And the other thing too that I want to talk about, Megan, we had touched upon this earlier, is specifically when it comes to the flea tick heartworm prevention.
Mm-hmm.
If we are just buying these medications online, or a pet parent is, without any testing for your heartworm or your tick diseases, there could be a population of pets that are getting the monthly prevention, but they already have the underlying disease, whether it's heartworm or tick-borne disease. And the pet parent thinks they're doing right because every month their pet is getting the prevention that they got online, and it's been cheaper, but we're not doing the testing because they're not coming into the clinic and having that discussion. And so a huge population of these pets are actually going undetected and have these underlying issues that the owner thinks, oh, I'm protecting them against heartworm because I'm doing the prevention. And it might not even be that the prevention is a problem, but if we're not testing, it's just going on, and we have no idea.
And I mean, I'm guilty of it. I gave my prevention on somewhere in April, and then I know that I gave the prevention on, May 15th. Mm-hmm. But missing one dose or going a month without prevention and having that window in which they can contract that dose, can contract that ailment. I mean, we know just from the products and the relationships we do have with the reps that if you do give, say, heartworm prevention to a heartworm positive animal, depending on the product, can have an adverse effect and cause illness as well.
Yep.
So, us pushing the screening is just trying to give an avenue to the client to just be more aware of where we are as far as your pet's health. I had even said last week that a small little poodly cross came in, was on NexGard last year, no heartworm prevention. Owner was on the fence of whether she wanted to test. She did test Lyme positive. And it was just from the exposure to Lyme's that she had picked off the ticks. She had mentioned she hadn't gotten ticks on her before, but had been exposed to them this year, and then was so surprised. But she was also super thankful, not heartworm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially playing that game of no heartworm prevention last year.
Right.
And then no, and that's the scary part about ticks as well. We definitely have that tick podcast out about how ticks are becoming a bigger problem year round. So like that exposure risk is there, and so we want to be on prevention year round as well.
Your vet clinics, all different vet clinics have a variety of different promos available to try and make it, cost effective. Let's get those pets on prevention before it turns into now treating a disease.
Yeah.
Another thing, kind of going back to just open-ended access to medication. One thing that we had seen or talked about before is, again, your veterinary team will advocate for monitoring, for side effects of chronic use of medication. There are certain medications that are not intended for long-term use, which is why your veterinarian will oftentimes prescribe it for a certain amount of time and then say, okay, if it's helping and we want to use this long term, we need to do some screening, whether it's just your basic blood work to make sure those little organs are okay and that we're not doing more harm by just open access to medication. But if clients are able to just go online and just hit refill, or add to cart for things like Medicam, for example.
Yeah, especially with the lack of requiring a prescription for those meds.
Right.
Like, again,
huge red flag. Huge red flag. Because again, everybody who's doing this it's for the best intention of their pet, right? You don't want to see your pet in pain. You don't want to see them, with an infection or whatever it is that they're seeking out these products for. But there are a lot of cases where some of these medications are not a one size fits all. And that is where the knowledge, the discussion, the education with your veterinary team, your veterinarian, whoever it may be, is really important. Because there may be something that's more appropriate for your pet, as opposed to just thinking, it was great, one or two times, or I've used this before, it should be safe to just continue. So, in these online pharmacies where those prescriptions are not required, you got to ask yourself why. Why is it required at my veterinary clinic that I have to be seen within a year, or that I have to have that basis before they'll continue on a script? And it is for good intention of your pet, because there are different things that maybe not everyone is aware about, why certain medications just can't be open-ended and continuous. So,
like giving pred as needed.
Yeah, don't give pred as needed. Your veterinarian will not support that one. There's a lot of health issues.
A lot of issues with steroids, long-term use.
Right, and that's our job to know that. That's our job to have those discussions with families, with pet parents. So, bottom line is, A, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. 2, we get it. We know that things are expensive right now, but we are here to not only advocate for your pet, but to work with the client to find a solution that is doable. And if you're ever in doubt, ask. This is a huge topic of conversation right now. It's becoming something more and more people are looking into, which, again, there is no shame in looking into that or no fault in doing that. We all price shop. We all price compare for different things. When it comes to your pet's health and your pet's safety, talk to the people who live, breathe, and work veterinary medicine. Yeah. And that's your veterinary clinic and the people that work in it. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any questions, comments, things you want to talk about for a later podcast date or things to visit,
throw in them the comments.
Yeah, put them in the comments or send us a message, send us an email, whatever way you want to connect with us. We'll be here and happy to keep talking about things that are important in vet med.
Yep,
All right.
absolutely.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next time.